So today I'd like to talk to you about the one behavior that exes just can't seem to resist. Now, I'm not saying if you achieve this behavior that they're guaranteed to come back. I think anyone who does that is being disingenuous. But what I can guarantee is that if you do achieve this behavior, they're a lot more likely to reach out and show interest. And that's a start. So let's prime this discussion a bit. Starting in 2020, I took a vast interest in understanding what made success stories, people who came through our program and successfully got their exes back, different from the people who were not so successful. And if you've watched any of my earlier videos or read some of my earlier articles, you know that the big thing I learned from this research was that almost every single person who successfully got their ex back got to this place emotionally where they had the mentality that they were willing to let go of their ex. In other words, they outgrew them. So that's the key, right? Outgrow your ex and you'll be golden. Well, what if I were to tell you that there's actually more to it, that we actually need to dig deeper to understand what's going on beneath the surface? And that's what we're going to be focusing on today. But first, before we get started on that, I have a very important thing to talk about with you. And that's your ability to subscribe and like our videos. Help us out a ton with the YouTube algorithm. You don't know how much it really means to me. So if you could do that, do that. If not, no hard feelings. I shall continue teaching. So you're always hearing me talk a lot on these videos about the importance of outgrowing an ex. But what does that actually mean? Does that mean you're letting them go? Well, not really. Does that mean you're forgetting about them? Definitely not. So what's this magical thing about outgrowing your ex? Well, I think it has a lot to do with focus. So someone who's successfully able to outgrow an ex, essentially all they're really doing is taking the focus off of that ex and putting it onto themselves. And this is a really underrated aspect of the entire process because most of the time people don't have full focus on themselves, especially in relationships, especially if they're dating someone who makes them incredibly anxious. They'll put all of the focus on making sure that that relationship isn't lost. And as a result, they kind of neglect themselves. So all of the time, energy, and emotions invested into them have now been freed up to invest into yourself. And with that level of focus, you should be capable of doing something that they themselves aren't capable of. And this is the behavior that people find irresistible. We're naturally drawn to people who are able to do things that we cannot do. And if you really think about it, someone who has this level of admiration, who has this level of your respect, you can almost begin to revolve around them, almost like the sun and the planets and how the planets revolve around the sun. So the big behavior that exes can't resist are falling for people who are capable of doing things that they are not capable of, things that they admire, things that they want to be part of. To illustrate the point I'm trying to make here, I'm going to tell you a story from my real life based on two exes that I dated and the ways they handled the breakup. So one ex did something valuable with their time and the other ex didn't. So let's start with ex number one. So ex number one was my first real relationship. It lasted for about 9 months. I broke up with her. I was not perfect. Definitely allowed my jealousy to get into the way. There were fights every day. It really wasn't a great relationship. Now, after the breakup, we really didn't talk for about a month. In fact, the only time that we ever talked after the breakup was when a hurricane hit our hometown, and she reached out to me to see if I was okay. We had a nice formal conversation, but mostly I went on living my life, she went on living her life. Nothing wrong with that. Of course, I did the typical ex-boyfriend things that you typically do, which is spy on her on Facebook, see what she's up to. But eventually I found that she's not really doing anything new or different. She's kind of doing the same old things. I'm getting tired of the updates, so I just blocked her on social media so I wouldn't get stuck into this really unhealthy habit. Then I moved on with my life. That's ex number one. Let's take a look at ex number two. Now this is a different situation. So this is a college relationship, lasted for about a month. Again, I broke up with her. Now my reasoning was that I thought I could do better than her. There wasn't much fighting. She was really nice. It was a really very short relationship, but it ended. I ended it. But ex number two is a far more interesting breakup case. So all throughout our relationship, this girl wanted nothing more than to be part of our community college volleyball team. She was a volleyball player in high school, really enjoyed it. She wasn't as tall as some of the other players, but she was quick. So when we were dating, she tried out for the volleyball team and didn't make it. Then I broke up with her. I know, Bad timing, but I promise it has no correlation to do. I just simply thought I could do better and wanted to move on to someone else that I had a better connection with. So fast forward a year and I run into her walking through the halls of a different class, except she's completely different than I remembered her. It was like looking at a different person. Twice as confident, surrounded by other women, volleyball women, and it almost looked like she was leading the pack, like she became the alpha female of this volleyball crew. So I go home. I do what you typically do in these situations when you're too afraid to ask people questions themselves. I go to Facebook, I look up her profile and find she has made the volleyball team, has been named one of the captains of the volleyball team. I'm stunned, I'm interested, I reach out to her, hoping that she'll respond to me. For the first time since knowing her, I feel intimidated. I'm actually nervous if she'll respond to me. She doesn't. But this lesson is plain as day. You have one ex who really didn't do anything valuable with their time, who kind of did the same old. And then you have the other ex who did something valuable with her time, who accomplished something that I kind of admired, and I was naturally drawn more to that person in the post-breakup period than the other person. And for me, that's the biggest key with breakups. If you want to be irresistible to an ex in the post-breakup period, work on accomplishing something that they'll not only admire, but that they themselves are incapable of accomplishing. I can't play volleyball. I don't even know how to get a ball to go across the net very well. She did. I admired that. I admired her drive. I admired the person she became in this pursuit. But no one ever talks about this. I'm gonna pick on the breakup community a little bit here. The breakup community is kind of dumb, in my opinion. And I'm certainly throwing myself under the bus here because I've been guilty, much as my other peers, as this. You know, often you'll go to YouTube, you'll see titles like, get your ex back in 30 days, or here's what's guaranteed to work on an ex. Or, ooh, my personal favorite, the no contact rule is guaranteed to work on an ex in these certain days. And it's frustrating because I feel like it gives people unrealistic expectations. The mere fact that those titles exist gives someone the idea that it's possible when in reality it's implausible. The only thing that's truly ever worked for me and my clients is self-improvement. And to me, that's the most important thing you should be doing after the breakup. That's one of the reasons why we harp on it so much, even during no contact periods. That's what exes find irresistible. You accomplishing things that they are not capable of, that they can admire. It becomes almost this healing mechanism in and of itself. By accomplishing this great feat, heals you, makes you more confident, makes you stronger, puts your life in perspective, puts the breakup in perspective, creates this scenario where you aren't having your ex placed on this pedestal above you. In fact, in many cases, as you're really working on this pursuit, you have them below you on the pedestal. They're not disciplined enough to do this. They're not doing this with their life. What are they doing? But in order for this to work, you need to choose a worthwhile feat to accomplish. But how do you do that? Well, that's where sort of my magnum opus concept comes into play. Now, if you're familiar with the way our program works, we're really big on this concept called the Holy Trinity, which is essentially looking at your life and dividing it up into three distinct categories: health, wealth, and relationships. Now, the end goal for the Holy Trinity is to fill up each of these cups so that you have or live a balanced life. Sure, you can't work out 8 hours a day, but you can work out a little bit to improve health. You can spend time with friends, family, you can work. All of these things, if you're doing them every day, you'll find you're living a balanced life. But in a weird way, you're kind of spinning your wheels just by doing these things. I found I feel great when I'm able to fill the Holy Trinity cups up, but a little disappointed. Like I'm not accomplishing something great. And that's where the magnum opus comes into play. So the magnum opus, in my mind, is a intersection between health, wealth, and relationships. It's a worthwhile goal. And usually by pursuing it and achieving it, you become someone worth admiring. You become someone noteworthy, someone that gets attention, not only from an ex, but from other people as well. And that's what puts your life into perspective. One other thing, the magnum opus, it's not easy to accomplish. It's not the type of thing that you can just wake up the next day, accomplish, and be like, okay, I did it. It takes years, sometimes tens of years to accomplish this. All of the other stuff, texting correctly, social media etiquette, looking your best. I mean, it's important, but it's kind of pales in comparison to this. Magnum opus, purpose, becoming someone that other people admire. And no one talks about it because it's not the in thing to talk about. It's not the most exciting thing to talk about. It's hard. I mean, I'm sitting here and telling you like, hey, find a greater goal in your life than your ex. something that you care about more than them. But what I know will happen is if you are able to find a worthy goal, the pursuit will make you feel alive. It will make you feel like you're having a greater purpose, that you're put on this earth for something. We are more than our relationships, especially with exes. I think though, in the breakup period, we kind of forget that because we're so desperate to fix what is wrong. But oftentimes, the best way to fix what is wrong with the relationship is to focus inward on yourself. Not to say there's anything wrong with yourself, but it's about changing your priorities, changing your focus, putting it in on something worthwhile, something that's not going to break up with you, something that as you put in effort, you can see results. There's nothing that makes me personally feel more alive than the pursuit. It's how I know I didn't waste my time on this earth, how I know my life is worth something. So let me ask you a question. What's yours?